This is GARIS masculist-MGTOW flyers. That is 2 3-page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de GARIS. This is flyer number 9, entitled Menfairing the Divorce Courts. Description. This flyer makes concrete proposals on how the gender politicians can reform the divorce courts to make them men fair, and how to address other critical masculist-MGTOW issues. Flyer itself. Menfairing the divorce courts. One of the major reasons for the rise of the MGTOW movement, that's men going their own way, refusing to marry and refusing to have kids, spending their money on themselves, doing what they love, is due to the fluffy feminist takeover of the divorce courts. Feminists in the 70s lobbied the male feminist gender politicians hard and got them to change the divorce laws, so that in practice in the US, men in the US are now being financially massacred in their tens of millions by losing custody of their kids with 90% probability, losing their house, having to pay child support to kids they may see twice a month on weekends, and having to pay alimony to their fluffy ex-wives with no legal obligation on them to get off their lazy bums and become FIPs, financially independent persons, so that they continue to parasite off the man after the divorce as they did before. This reality in the divorce courts is so toxic that now 70% of young men in the US, according to recent US census statistics, refuse to marry and have kids because they see traditional marriage as toxic, like playing Russian roulette with only 2 chambers in the barrel, giving you a 50-50 chance of blowing your brains out, or analogously, a more or less 50-50 chance of being financially massacred in a US divorce court, given that half of marriage end in divorce and that women initiate 70% of divorces. This situation obviously cannot continue, because if it does, and at the same rate, then doing the math shows that the US population will be largely wiped out within a mere century. So obviously things have to change. The gender politicians will have to make the divorce court system men fair, or they will be rightly accused of being genocidal criminals for having been the root cause of men's financial massacring, and hence the marriage and fatherhood strike by men on a massive scale, the dominant reality of our times. So what can be done? Here are some concrete proposals given from a masculist, men's lib perspective. And I'll mention a bullet, as in a bulleted item. Bullet. Push hard for the creation of a FIP society, that is, one in which all adults are FIPs, financially independent persons, so both sexes are strongly encouraged to become career competent so that they can earn good money when they graduate by studying one of the professions, for example, medicine, dentistry, architecture, law, veterinary science, etc., or the techs, engineering, computer science, math, physics, chemistry, geology, etc., and not one of the career incompetent majors so popular with the majority of women today. For example,
English literature, psychology, philosophy, history, anthropology, women's studies, sociology, etc.
that keep women poor. Bullet. Teaching calculus in 12th grade should be made compulsory to all high school students, so that entering the professions or techs at university is not closed off to them, since these fields demand a knowledge of calculus as a prerequisite. Bullet. Put enormous moral pressure on women to be FIPs, financially independent persons, so that in their impecunious 30s they will not look around for some robot male, that is manslave, a traditional male who expects to be parasited upon by a fluffy wife to pay for the middle-class house that these fluffy women want to raise their kids in. Bullet. In the divorce courts, make joint custody of the kids the default option, with single custody being the exception under exceptional circumstances. Bullet. Push for a divorcing couple to buy a cheap apartment near the house that the ex-spouses alternate living in, while One ex-spouse is living in the apartment, the other ex-spouse is living in the house with the kids. The next week, they swap places. Bullet. The ownership of the house remains with the original owner or owners. Bullet. Scrap the alimony concept, since both ex-spouses are FIPs. Bullet. Legislate a PARA, paternity rejection right, equivalent to women's MARA, maternity rejection right, also known as, aka, abortion right. If a woman continues a pregnancy that the father rejects, then the child is totally her financial responsibility. Otherwise, she aborts within a reasonable time limit. Bullet. Stop the misandry in the broadcast media. Men outperform women on nearly every scientifically measurable criterion, so men should be respected for their superiority. For example, winning 99% of the Science Nobel Prizes and dominating the Who's Who entries. Bullet. Set up a panel of experts to advise the gender politicians on how to reform the gender laws and the divorce laws so that men can be encouraged to reproduce again and in safety. If not, then the US population will continue to evaporate. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de GARIS. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. YouTube channel name GARIS Masculist-MGTOW Flyers. Ciao.